Hello and welcome to everybody's favorite Thursday offering from the Player 3 podcast.
My favorite.
3 Topic Thursday with Luke and Diz. I am Luke. This is Diz. This is Diz's thumb, who he is now going to draw a picture of a face on. And,
I'm not left-handed.
Oh, well.
If I did it this way, it would be a good face.
Okay, well, we'll give you some time then. You do that, and I'm going to let people know who we are and what we do. For those of you who do not know, this is 3 Topic Thursday. We get together every Thursday. We've got 3 different topics that we're going to go through. You guys feel free to chat along. You can watch it over here live on twitch.tv/player3podcast. And if you missed it and want to check it out afterwards, go over to youtube.com/player3podcast, and you can watch it over there. Let me first of all apologize. It has taken me a little bit of time, but this evening, the podcast for Monday will go live across all podcast services. But if you can't wait till then, head on over to youtube.com/player3podcast and check the episode out there. Zephyr Baby is here.
Woo!
Hello, Zephyr.
So Milky was too.
We missed you. And Milky's here, but he's lurking. Milky's all the time in like full body lurker armor. All right. But Zephyr, we are always glad to have you. We moved the podcast to 5 on Monday, so that's kind of after Zephyr's bedtime. But we're glad that he takes some time out of his day to come hang out with us. And how's the drawing coming along over there? Oh, he's just finishing the hair. His finger is going super sane. Oh, I like it. I don't know if our viewers at home will be able to see it, but try to hold it on out there for them. Yeah, they're not going to be able to see it. Is that as far as your arm extends?
All
right, guys.
T-Rex. Let's see if this works.
Oh, yes, it sort of did.
Take that, silly putty.
Oh, that's great. I'll keep
Did you ever
that
do
forever.
That with silly putty in like the comic books, like in the comic pages in the newspaper?
No.
You splat it on there with the fresh ink and you stretch it, and that's pretty much all you do.
Uh-huh. And it
Dude,
comes
we were
right
poor.
off on the putty.
We were poor.
Did your mom also say that the floor is lava is a good game?
Yes, and waffles all day, every day.
Yeah. Microwave waffles, no side dishes was made to your death. Very ironic.
Wait, side what?
Side dishes, they are an item that you place alongside of your main dish, and you eat it along with it. So, like, you've got, well, this is going to blow your mind, because for some people, bacon is a side dish. So you'd have your waffle, and then you'd have 2 strips of bacon. Maybe some hash browns.
First, what are dishes? We use paper plates.
Oh, my apologies. Imagine it, well, you washed those, right?
Yes, well,
Now imagine now imagine washing a plate and it not getting soggy.
That's what disintegrate.
That's what a dish is.
Devil magic, man.
All right.
Devil magic.
Well, I'm excited. Diz, are you excited?
I'm always
because we
excited,
got a good show lined up. It took us a while to come up with our topics, and because of that, we ask you folks at home to send in your topics. Player3podcast@gmail.com or
nice.
at Player3podcast on Twitter or at TK from Antioch on Twitter. Any of those things work. Submit your topics, and we'll try to throw those in from time to time.
Are you forcing me back into the Twitter world?
I am trying to. What's up, Cybernethy?
Yeah.
The gang is back. Monday was weird. We didn't have many people stop by, but it's all right. We just keep on trucking.
I was
Turd from your vacation.
Yes, fitting 5 days worth of stuff into 2 days was fun, but tiresome.
Jet skiing.
Yeah, dude. It was terrifying at first because we're going like 5 miles an hour and it's wanting to squirrel over. And Katie's like, just crank it. Just go for it.
Yeah.
So,
well, Katie understands. It's like you got to go. Well, you just got to go so fast that if you crash, you
evaporate.
Yeah. You become one with the ocean.
Yeah, dude. So we were at the end of it, we were hitting waves at like 50 miles an hour. So unsafe.
Yeah. Which is, I mean, that's just what you have to do.
Yeah.
It's just what has to happen.
Dude,
all right.
I'm ready.
We're 3 Topic Thursday. It's 2 good friends, 3 good topics, and we're about to give it to you. Let's start off with topic
Give it away now.
numero uno. Give it away now. All right. First topic. I was perusing the Reddits, which I'm becoming more and more disenfranchised with the more I'm a part of it.
I've never gotten into Reddit.
I was into it, and then I'm existing in it, and I'm like, I don't particularly enjoy this community anymore.
Ooh.
There are
Like
communities I
vicious?
do enjoy. The Vita community is great.
You guys gotta stick together.
Yeah, we got to stick together. But the Vita community is good, and the Xbox One community is actually pretty good too. And I'm a PS4 guy, but I'm not.
Okay.
They're all right sometimes. you know how it is. A few bad apples spoil the bunch. And I think that's what the problem is.
They say too many cooks.
That's right. But that's not the American way.
No.
But I was perusing on Reddit because I still think it's a good source, a good resource for aggregating news and being current on what's going on.
Mm-hmm.
But there was a self-post. You know what a self-post is?
When you post and you answer it?
Yeah, it's just a question. It's not a link to anything. Like, it's a question or just a rant. And this was kind of a rant about in the PS4 subreddit about people being aggravated with how many 2D side scrollers there have been. And so the first topic I want to bring to you is oversaturated genres. But leading into that topic is this discussion about 2D platformers, 2D side-scrolling platformers, kind of this 8-bit genre of games that is starting to make a resurgence. And just to kind of get your thoughts, because you're not a PS4 owner. See, I'm a PS4 owner, so I see that and I kind of relate to it and I understand, like, man, it does seem like we're getting 8-bit stuff. And I think 2 weeks ago in the drop, there was something that was like, resurrecting and innovating on the 8-bit gameplay style, and I'm like, no, you aren't. Everyone's been doing that. But as an Xbox One owner, what do you like? Do you get that same sense about the 2D side scrollers?
Where are they seeing all these at? Are they seeing them on PlayStation?
Yeah, on PS4.
I haven't seen many of that. Like, if I had to, I don't get on the Xbox Live very often and look at what games are there to buy, because I've still yet to buy into the, just buying an indie game, not really know what you're getting into. I'm still trying to get over that hump. But from what I've seen, it's been very much like, I don't know, like creative games such as like iDarb, or more of like an RPG, or not RPG style, I'm sorry. More of just like, I don't know, dude. I haven't seen many of that. I've just seen a lot of pinball games.
A lot of pinball.
I've seen so many pinball games.
Yeah.
But, I mean, none that really jumped out at me. But also, again, I'm not really into that scene yet. I would like to get in there, but every game that I want is only on PlayStation.
Right.
But I'm not seeing very many. But I still think that they're very, I still think they're innovative, because it gives people freedom to build the game that they want. They're not all cookie cutter games anymore, and I appreciate that.
Yeah, and I think what we're starting to see now is like we're seeing people who grew up with these games now making these games and running their own independent studios and trying to really re-embody the nostalgia that they have of playing, Super Mario Brothers and stuff like that, and bringing that to generations now, because a lot of gamers our age and older look at the gaming generation coming up and we're like, look, gaming is far more than just Call of Duty and Halo and Battlefield and first-person shooters. Like there's the 3D platform, there's the 2D platformer, there's the RPG, there's all these different game modes that a lot of kids who call themselves gamers aren't familiar with, because it's just whatever the latest, greatest first-person shooter is. And so now you have these people our age and a little bit older running their own studios saying, well, let's bring back what was great about those sorts of games. One of my favorite games that I've played this year has been Shovel Knight. I played it when it came out on Vita. I finished it over like 2 days, and like it's been a long time since a game like that has just kind of grasped me. And the first game I ever played was a 2D side scroller. It was Sonic the Hedgehog 2. And me and my sister spent a ton of time playing that game, and that was in different areas of my life. Like when we first got the Sega Genesis, then when I was in high school, I bought her and her husband one of those plug-and-play Sega Genesis that they sell at like CVS, and it came with all the Sonic games preloaded onto it. And so like I relived it then, and now I'm getting to relive the Sonic the Hedgehog 2 memory, but this like newly embodied way of doing it. Now, can it become oversaturated? Absolutely. Does it necessarily diminish the value of that genre? No, because the best things are always going to rise to the top, and you're going to get your Shovel Knights. You're going to have your bad ones, but then you're going to get your Shovel Knights. And for a lot of studios that are 5 or 6 people, they don't really have any other options but doing these sorts of small games like that, because it takes hundreds of people to make AAA titles. And so if you just have this passionate few, you're a little more limited if you want to get it out in a timely manner and want to be able to recoup the time and the money you're paying out to these people who are working on the game. But outside of just the 2D platformer, because I think we say saturated, and it sounds negative, and I think it can be negative, but I think even in a saturated market, there are games that are good in them. So my question to you is, we've seen kind of a few genres that have just become really, really saturated with games. The 2D platformer, side-scrolling platformer, is definitely one of them. Then I think we've seen zombies. Mm-hmm. The zombie genre get just tons and tons and tons of footing and of just playthrough, and that's a result of the success of the Call of Duty zombie mode and the success of The Walking Dead as a television series and a comic book franchise, and so those things have become oversaturated, where it almost seems like if you're gonna have a monster game, and it has to tie in somewhat to zombies. And then I think the third one we've really seen is the futuristic shooter has been one, because even ones that were more rooted in realism have now advanced beyond, and we're getting futuristic shooters. So just looking, future casting a little bit as to what we think the next oversaturated genre might be, what do you feel like is about to get there? Oh, and the other one I was going to say is the music, like the rhythm games, the Guitar Heroes, the rock bands, the Just Dances,
But the thing is about that, it's not that it's just getting oversaturated with the music games. It's just very few of them are actually being successful. So I actually feel like they're kind of dying out very quickly. I sometimes go to Target and I'm seeing, this is a guitar game that I've never heard of before. But definitely when they were in their heydays, that was mega. But mine's kind of like this it's more of an umbrella. But I'm just going to say the survival horror overall, because a lot of people and myself were quite crushed when Silent Hill was canceled. And I feel like in response to that, developers are seeing, oh wow, this was like the game a lot of people were looking for. So we're going to see more games like that. We're going to see Allison Road be successful. You're going to see these other games come out of the woodwork that kind of do the same style, because that's what the community is crying for right now. Like, hey, we really wanted this, and people are saying, well, we're going to give you something. So we're going to see that in the future, definitely.
Well, and that's one of those holes, just like everyone saw. It's not just it's like there's a ton of money to be made there, because everyone had their wallet open already. And it's like, well, now we can just kind of sneak our hand before they put it back in their pocket. Because the Allison Road thing came out, and I feel like the internet blew up about it. And it was just a proof of concept. Like, that's not even actual gameplay for it, but for some reason, everyone was already willing to throw their money at it, not knowing anything about the game except for. And I guess the same can be said about Silent Hills. Like, PT had nothing to do with the full game itself. It was really just the teaser that led you into the announcement for it. It was a proof of concept of the engine and those sorts of things. But and people were just all, we don't need to see anything else. Here's our money for it. And Allison Road was the same way. And so companies look at that response and they're like, this is a cash grab right here. Let's jump in.
So,
I'm sorry.
Oh, it's perfectly fine. But here's the weird thing. I'm going to say that there's going to be an oversaturated market of those survival horror games, but I'm also going to see it as a resurgent. It's going to bring new life into survival horror, because when you think of survival horror, the number one thing that comes to mind is going to be Resident Evil, and it has definitely kind of fell off what made it survival horror. So I feel like this new surge of games that are going to be like Silent Hills is going to bring it back into focus, but then people are going to be like, whoa, just like zombies, we're getting a lot of it all at once.
Yeah.
So it's kind of going to be a good and bad thing. We're going to see some winners come out, and we're going to see some losers come out of this.
Yeah, well, and even before PT, we were getting games like Outlast, Alien Isolation, like games that were flawed in some sense, but for the most part, people really enjoyed them. And so I do think it's one of those. It's such a resurgence because it was something that had gone away for so long, because all of the survival horror we'd seen kind of went more of the action route, But now that we're seeing like people are craving, like horror is still a very viable option. We just had Until Dawn, which for PS4 that came out, and a lot of people are jumping on that. And and Cyberneth, he says it real well. He said that there's too many games copying the same formula used by predecessors, but that doesn't mean the market itself or the genre is oversaturated. They just need someone with an original idea to come along and breathe new life into them. And I think that's true. Like when we make a genre into a trope, and then we just market the trope and don't innovate on the genre. But I mean, this is somewhat related. Let's see, where are we at here?
Let me just add this in there real quick.
Okay.
If we're agreeing with what Cybernethy said, and it is absolutely right, then we got to put first-person shooters in there. They're all the same anymore. They're all the cookie cutter. We need just a new idea to bring it back. Yeah,
well, and companies tend to like tether themselves even when they're trying to innovate to what is just the established. Like I think about Destiny and how Destiny had marketed itself as some innovation on the first-person shooter, but then tried to retract it and tether itself a little more closely alongside what exists in the first-person genre already. And now that they're starting to find success in what they've been doing, they now feel like after a year they can ship the game they originally wanted to ship because they're like, well, we've got people now. And as long as you've got a good gameplay, as long as you have good gameplay and you have good mechanics, people are going to learn how to play your game, even when it's incredibly complicated, like Destiny was. But we need to give developers more of the benefit of the doubt rather than getting all up in arms when a game removes a feature for the sake of art or for the sake of direction within it. Like when Battlefront says that it's not going to have, a dedicated campaign mode, we have to just trust and say, okay, we can still criticize it once it comes out and we see that it's bad, but we can't just throw companies under the bus for removing something when they may be adding a slew of other things.
The Heath Ledger effect.
What?
The Heath Ledger effect.
I don't know what that means.
We look and see what they're doing and disagree immediately, but then when it's released and we experience it, it changes our world. Everybody's like, oh, he's going to be the Joker, but he ended up being great. Mm-hmm. So we're seeing these people making these actions. We're like, oh, that's a terrible idea, but when we play it, that's when we can say it was bad or if it was good.
Yeah. What's up, Wispa98? And again, like I think Larry and I were talking about this on the podcast on Monday or before the podcast, and it's just this idea that like everybody has an equal voice, or they feel like they have an equal voice in it. And so if I have a complaint about something, I have just as much a right to be heard about my complaint as somebody who really, really knows what they're talking about within it. And so within, like, there's kind of just this black hole that people yell into, and for some reason people who are making decisions look into that black hole for the complaints and then change their direction based on those things. And our reactions so much dictate like the direction of these projects. But
is that what happened with the one?
Yeah. And I've said it time and time again, like the one had some things that would have changed the landscape of gaming for the good, and because we said we have to tether everything to what we've experienced before, we limit the spaces that other people can go. Now, that's on Microsoft just as much as it is on us. Microsoft did a terrible job of explaining what they were doing, and they also did a terrible job of, shifting their direction in less extreme ways than just saying, we're going to go back and do it the way it's always been done. But Cybernethy's comment about there being, too many iterations of stuff and it being formulaic reminded me of this story from GameSpot, and this is somewhat related. Max Landis, who was a writer for the movie American Ultra that came out, that's got Jesse Eisenberg and Kristen Stewart in it, kind of the same cast as was in Adventureland. He went on, they called it a Twitter rant. It's not really a Twitter rant, though. He says, so here's an interesting question. American Ultra finished dead last at the box office, behind even Mission Impossible and Man from U.N.C.L.E. American Ultra was also beaten by the critically reviled Hitman Agent 47 and Sinister 2, despite being a better reviewed film than either, which leads me to a bit of a conundrum. Why? American Ultra had good ads, big stars, a fun idea, and honestly, it's a good movie. Certainly better in the internet's opinion than other things released the same day. If you saw it, you probably didn't hate it. So I'm left with an odd thing, which is that American Ultra lost to a sequel reboot, a biopic, a sequel, and a reboot. It seems that reviews didn't even matter. The movie didn't matter. The argument that can and will be made is big-level original ideas don't sell. The question is, has that changed? I wish I could say Ultra was a bad movie, but it isn't. Divisive, sure, but better than others this week. Am I wrong? Is trying to make original movies in a big way just not a valid career path anymore for anyone but Tarantino and Nolan? That's the question. Am I wrong? Are original ideas over? I wanted to pose this question to the public because I feel put lightly confused. And then he just continues on in the rant. But I think that same idea transfers over to video games, and where the big AAA multi-million-dollar budget video games are always going to be derivative and iterative of things that have come prior to it. We very rarely see original big budget games like that. I just think the indie space is so important for being able to create original ideas that we can go back to. But then the problem is that it's always going to be, it's always just going to we're going to take whatever that is and we're going to multiply it across 50 games. And
it's safe. They know they can make their money back on it. I don't think it's a lack of ideas. It's just a lack of security for them.
Yeah.
There's ideas out there.
But and I think it's interesting that like you've got these big publishers like Ubisoft, these big development places, publishers like Ubisoft, like EA, who are putting money into games like Child of Light and like Unraveled and all of those sorts of things. And so, and why it takes like something just like Quantum Break, I think is going to be, I don't know if it's going to be incredibly innovative, but I do think it's going to be different enough to not be considered alongside other things. But that's why they needed to go out and get, big name stars to be in it. And because it is going to try to innovate alongside a TV show, alongside like a live action sort of thing. But anyway, yeah, I don't know how we got there, but let's go back. I think we, I'm trying to see, we a lot of comments were coming in and I think we missed some here. Milky 513, the phrase big stars can be debated, but the concept can be truly applied to music and video games easily. The general masses want something they're familiar with so they can feel included in the conversation or familiar with the content. And absolutely, and I guess that is true in the music industry as well. Like the people that have the most to lose are the people who play it the safest. And that's why the top of the iTunes pop chart is not going to be the place where you're finding like new steps in music. You got to do a little digging to find where the next big thing is going to be, and because everyone just kind of builds off of what already exists. It was Cybernyth says, "What does that say about the people who operate differently from what the masses are interested in?" We have to be more vocal. Number one, but number two, anyone. You got to think the masses is one way of looking at it, and then there may be 10,000 other ways of looking at it. And so the people who don't look at the masses are divided up over 10,000 different areas and 10,000 different viewpoints. You like music I don't like, and I like music that you don't like. We have overlap within it, but like we don't just take what is given to us and say like, oh man, Hitman 47 is based off of a cool video. Agent 47 is based off a cool video game, so I'm gonna like that movie. Mm-hmm. We look at it more critically. And the thing is like the reviews for these movies. A movie like American Ultra really requires there to be like a word of mouth thing where someone goes and sees American Ultra and they're like, you guys need to go see that, and then 4 friends go the next weekend to see it. I think. But that first weekend box office number is always going to suffer for things that aren't sequels to stuff. Like Sinister 2, when has there ever been a good horror sequel? Can you think of a good horror sequel?
I mean, not that we're up to the caliber, no.
No. And so, but yet, still, Sinister 2 comes out, we're familiar with it, so we're going to throw our money at it. Because the first one was pretty good. You disagree, but I thought the first one was pretty good. But to my answer to the original question that was posed lots of minutes ago, is I think the open world. I don't know how narrow I want to get with this, but the open world like 200+ hour epics, I think is going to become more and more oversaturated because we're starting to see more and more the idea, especially after the conversation with the Order 1886, that like people want massive amounts of gameplay for their money. And I think it's easy for those, like there doesn't need to be as many of those to be oversaturated as there are like 8-bit side scrollers. 8-bit side scrollers can be completed in 2 days, Whereas like an open world game like The Witcher or like Dragon Age Inquisition or like even like Fallout or Mass Effect or these sorts of games that come out require so much time that if even two of them release alongside one another, it's like a log jam. If The Witcher would have come out within 2 weeks of Dragon Age Inquisition, the conversation about those two games would have completely changed because they're so similar and they're so big. And I think more and more of the AAA companies are going to be like, look, the way we're going to sell this game is by having more and more and more content jammed within it, even if it isn't necessarily valuable content. And we're going to get more, we're going to get more saturated within that.
But once that open world 200-hour epic gets saturated, what's the next level? Like, what's the next level of gaming after that?
Well, and again, oversaturation doesn't mean necessarily bad, but it creates competition that causes games to rise to the top. Like Shovel Knight was incredibly. It's funny how we'll talk about some 2D side scrollers and we'll be like, that's very derivative, but then we look at a game like Shovel Knight and we say, well, that's a love letter. That's they're what's the word I'm looking for? They're honoring that, and whereas if it's not so good, we're like, they're just doing what's always been done. But Shovel Knight was done in such a good way that it's like we talk about it with different terms. And I think the same can be said in open world games. There are going to be really good open world games and there are going to be really bad open world games. And we're going to see the ones like The Witcher where it's really a passion piece. And then we're going to see other open world games where it's like, this is a 15-hour game that you just threw a bunch of crappy side missions onto. The J-Strom asked a question we can hit real quick here between topics. Do you guys love or hate QTEs, Quicktime Events?
Oh, man. I'm going to have to get a little spoilery here. Do we have the spoiler hat?
Oh, no, I don't.
Oh, jeez.
Oh, jeez.
Oh, jeez.
No, I don't know where it is either.
Well, dang.
It's okay. Spoiler. I'll keep my hand here.
This is the spoiler hat now.
All right, go ahead.
I always thought they were very interesting because they require you to stay on your toes, and it sometimes requires you to watch the videos. And I think that's something that a lot of people like to skip through. They like to just get on with the game, and they're not even concerned with the story. And there's still a great story in most games. But I was immediately turned off to Quicktime Events because of Dying Light.
Ooh, I thought you were going to go a different direction. It's the direction I'm going to go. So
okay,
just go ahead.
Good. Again, spoilers. You play the whole game just like you would any other first-person game. You're aiming, you're shooting, you're swinging your weapons, everything you are doing. The last mission, the mission to end the story, is all Quicktime Events. It is so unfulfilling. Like, you've spent so much time playing to this point, and you don't even get to do anything. You don't even get to finish defeating the bad guy. You just got to time it out.
Yeah.
I was so turned off by that.
That was. Oh, go ahead.
Because it had nothing to do with the rest of the game. You don't see any more of those.
Right. Well, in mine, I think it's an issue all throughout the game, but that was with The Order 1886. I was so disappointed because and when we played that game and I reviewed it, I used the word micromanaged because that's how I felt the Quicktime Events were. It was micromanaging me to play the game and to see the game and to experience the game exactly how the developer wanted me to. And I feel like Quicktime Events sometimes remove the agency from gaming, whereas like in a game that's real time based and whether it's a shooter or an action game or whatever, like I feel like my input matters and there's strategy within it rather than just an X popped up on the screen, so I need to press X. And video games are fun because of the agency that you have within them, because you are in control. But whenever I get to a QuickTime event, I feel like the developer says, "All right, you hand it to me for this segment and let me play it how it's supposed to be played," which totally goes counterintuitive to what gaming's all about. All right. You're watching Three Topic Thursday over here on twitch.tv/player3podcast. If you've tuned in late and you missed any of this, this will be archived over on youtube.com/player3podcast. We just finished our first topic. Now we're moving into our second topic. A little bit more serious in a conversation that we're not the first voices to speak into by any means. But it's the idea of violence in video games. And this whole question's kind of been renewed in the media because of a report of a study that was revealed, a study that was published by the American Psychological Association a couple weeks ago. This is from an article over on BBC News. It says, it's titled, "Do video games make people violent?" And we've been asking this question for almost 2 decades now. Yeah. But it says, more than 200 academics have signed an open letter criticizing controversial new research suggesting a link between violent video games and aggression. The findings were released by the American Psychological Association, the APA. It set up a task force that reviewed hundreds of studies and papers published between 2005 and 2013. The APA concluded while there was, quote, no single risk factor to blame for aggression, violent video games did contribute. Quote, the research demonstrates a consistent relation between violent video game use and increases in aggressive behavior, aggressive cognitions, and aggressive affect, and decreases in pro-social behavior, empathy, and sensitivity to aggression, end quote. Continue quote. It is the accumulation of risk factors that tend to lead to aggressive or violent behavior. The research reviewed here demonstrates that violent video game use is one such risk factor, end quote. However, a large group of academics said they felt the methodology of the research was deeply flawed, and then they go on to talk about how there wasn't peer review for it. But using this as a jumping off point, as we look into a world that is just being marred by violence almost weekly, it seems, in some way, shape, or form, maybe even daily. Where do you stand on this whole idea of violence in video games? Now, I'm going to preface this question to you by saying, like, you're not a professional counselor by any means, but you are trained as a counselor, and you went to school for this sort of stuff, and so you've probably looked at research on this stuff a little bit more closely than I have, and if I'm incorrect, correct me on that. So, what is your stance on this sort of stuff?
All right. One of the main things that you would see in a treatment program, like people who seek treatment for video game addiction and video game and violence that they feel like was caused by video games, the question that they propose is, do video games cause aggression, or do people with violent tendencies draw to the video games? Well, here's the deal. We all have an aspect of aggressiveness. We're people. I mean,
you should have seen me playing Madden last night.
We all have that aspect. But here's the thing. Most people are socially aware enough to put that aside, to have that, low key. Because it's something that we repress because we know that it's a part of our animalistic nature. We have the capability of being aggressive or passive. We all have that in us. So I don't believe that the tendency matters. Okay? Like, I wouldn't say I'm a very violent person, but I play violent video games all the time. Mm-hmm. Now, the thing that is to worry about when it comes to people and violence with video games is there's a lot of people who seek a certain level of rush. Mm-hmm. We're all seeking something that gives us pleasure, takes us to the next level and all that stuff. And a close second only staves off these impulses. Now, a very crude example, and I apologize if it offends a lot of people, but a good example of this is pornography. You start low, like certain things will get you where you need to go, but you keep digging deeper and deeper and deeper into it. So if someone continues to push these impulses further and further, if they've already, have become so desensitized to it that it no longer affects them mentally, that's when trouble can start. So I believe that violence emerges from video games if that person already has a pre-existing social or mental impairment. I mean, with these thoughts and impulses, only if you're having thoughts or impulses that you need to cause harm, video games have the potential to stave that off for a while, but not for forever.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't think it directly causes violence, but it could propagate because we don't know what these video games are doing with the violence. I believe that violence has different intentions behind it. You have the vengeance violence, the violence that you do in response to something, a revenge because you were wronged in a certain way. There's the preventative, where you stop something from happening. A lot of people see this as being more good. Then you got
like self-defense. Is that what you're talking about?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or to stop an action of someone else. Then there's the delusional, where you believe that others deserve the violence because of something they do. And then you got the psychosis, which is saying that I'm doing this violence because I need it. I need to do this.
Yeah.
So I don't believe that video games cause people to become violent, but I have a feeling that it could start people to not see it as enough at that moment.
Right.
To then take it to the next level. So, do you have anything to add? I can continue going.
Oh, well, to me, I think it's do violent video games cause people who are not naturally violent people to become violent people? I don't think. No. Absolutely not. However, I think there's two things to understand here. Because, see, the thing is, I grew up playing, and when I say grew up, I'm talking like middle school and beyond, playing Call of Duty, playing Halo, playing games where you pick up a gun and you try to shoot somebody and kill them. But I'm a pacifist in real life. Like, I would never go to war. I would never become part of combat. I would never shoot somebody, even if it was, in self-defense. Like, I am hyper pacifist in real life. So just from a personal standpoint, there's no way. Like, I play violent video games still to this day, and I've seen violent images, and I am not a violent person. If anything, it's shown me somewhat that I don't want to be a part of that. I'm like, I feel this intense playing a game. I don't want to feel even more intense like doing the actual thing. But I think there's two things to talk about within this, and I think one is the predisposition. Like, do you have a predisposition for violent behavior? And you kind of touched on that. Well, you really touched on that like violent video games can compound previously violent people. And that violence starts from an early age. And I thought it was interesting, and you may know more about this, but I don't even remember where I read it, that like you can't really test children for being sociopaths because they all have sociopathic tendencies. Mm-hmm. And so like predisposition, like we are all predisposed to like have this path of violence if we could, because like you said, it's an animalistic nature. So it's number one, predisposition, but number two, it's context. Like, what is the context that these games are made available to me in? And I had parents who drew really hard and fast boundaries about what I was allowed to intake and what I wasn't allowed to intake, not in like a hyper oppressive way or like a hovering parent way. Like, I was playing Call of Duty in middle school, and I wasn't one of those kids that like talked about your mom online, but I was one of those kids like who was playing online at the time. And so, but I had the context of parents who were involved in my life who made sure that the experience I had in video games wasn't the only experience of life that I was having. Like, I was involved in all sorts of other extracurricular things, whether it was after school programs or sports or whether it was in my local church or hanging out with friends. And like, I think when you begin to immerse yourself in any kind of a media, whether it's video games, whether it's television, whether it's hyperviolent music, whether any of these sorts of things, when that becomes your only sticking post for reality, because those medias require a suspension of reality in order to get the experience out of them. Like, you get the most out of playing through the story mode in Halo by trying to relate to who Master Chief is, and so if that's the only thing I'm doing, then I become desensitized to the things that I do. And so if I have parents who are like making sure that my reality is rooted in multiple areas and not just video games, then I won't migrate towards violence. And I thought the interesting part to this discussion was a quote from Dr. Mark Coulson. He says, quote, "I fully acknowledge that exposure to repeated violence may have short-term effects. You would be a fool to deny that. But the long-term consequences of crime and actual violent behavior, there's just no evidence linking violent video games with that. If you play 3 hours of Call of Duty, you might feel a little bit pumped, but you're not going to go out and mug someone." End quote. And but like you said, when you continually experience that adrenaline over time, and that's the only fix that you get for feeling like you are a powerful individual or like you are capable of something, then that can culminate into something else. And so, but I talked to my wife. My wife's a first grade teacher, so she's got like 7-year-olds who are talking about playing Grand Theft Auto and like these games that they have no business playing not because I think necessarily that that's going to make them into criminals, but because I understand that if you are letting your 7-year-old play that game, they probably aren't receiving the context that I just got done talking about. Like, it's not that the game is making them violent. It's that your lack of involvement in their decisions of what is probably the most discerning thing for them to be involved in that doesn't exist. And so, for me, I think those are the two biggest things. But go ahead. I'm gonna look at the comments.
Go for it. I was having a conversation with a good friend of mine back in West Virginia. This was a couple years ago. This is a guy who plays all sorts of M-rated games, all sorts of violent games, but he doesn't watch R-rated movies. So I was like, "Hey, what's the difference here?" He goes, "Well, the violence that is in movies is based off of like real gunshot wounds. You're seeing these things. This is what it's like in real life." And he's like, "Video games, it's all fake." But I brought up something to him. I said, "Here's the thing about video games: is that when you're playing Call of Duty." And do you mind if I mention this?
That's fine.
Okay. And I see that he wrote down the no Russian mission. You are cognitively making the decision to kill these people. You are physically pulling the trigger on your controller. And the video game shows you that killing someone is showing you a means of solution. So I told him, I was like, yes, R-rated movies have violence that is very realistic. But you're sitting there and watching it. You're experiencing it. In video games, you are actively sending an impulse to your brain saying, "I'm going to shoot this person."
This is him talking?
No, this is me.
This is you.
Him because
okay.
he won't watch R-rated movies
right.
because it's too real. And I'm saying, in video games, you are making this decision to shoot this person. So, being a teenager at the time, it was a few years ago, I said, more than that actually, I was playing Call of Duty and I was like, "I'm pretty good at this. So I should probably be really good at a real gun." So my dad took me to a shooting range. It was so much different. I never thought that I would be able to shoot a huge gun. I was just shooting a pistol. So
see, that's really funny
because I experienced the reality of it.
But see, I'm the opposite because I don't own a gun. Like I said, I never shoot somebody and I don't hunt. So like, what's the point in owning a gun? Not that I have any problem with anyone else owning a gun, but for a study that a kid did his senior year of high school, he asked us to he needed a range of people with experience with guns, and he asked me to come be a subject in the study. It was about the heart rate on the effect of accuracy, and he's like, "Have you ever shot a gun?" I'm like, "No, I've never shot a gun before." So we go out to the shooting range. I'm probably 20 years old at the time, and I'm shooting an AR-15. And like looking down the scope of that thing felt so much like looking down the scope of a gun in Call of Duty. I ended up being one of the best shooters that he had there, other than like the guys who were like really trained to do it. And
I couldn't get over the kick.
Oh well,
you don't experience that in the game.
But it's an AR-15, and there wasn't much kick on the AR-15.
I had a 45. But the reason why I was explaining that story is that in video games, in these violent video games, it's showing you that violence is a means of solution. And that could be very negative on people who already have that problem with reality.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't think video games cause violence. I believe pre-established social or mental issues can be brought out through it. But there's also more. I mean, like a lot of people nowadays play video games just as a therapeutic thing.
Mm-hmm.
You know, hey, I just had a hard day at work. I just want to zone out and play a game. So I don't think it necessarily brainwashes them to want to shoot up their work. People do it recreationally, but overall, I think it's just kind of one of those dead horse issues.
Yeah. Here we go. And the reactions in the comments are all kind of the same, and I have an opinion about this. Cybernethy says video games aren't as responsible for violent behavior than guns are for murder. Guns don't kill, criminals kill. This is like the schoolboy blaming the pencil for his own spelling errors.
Woo, that's good. Never heard that.
And then Epidemic HD says people can blame games as much as they want, but at the end of the day, if you commit a violent crime, it's your body and your decision 100%. Milky513 says, no, wait, hold on. There was another comment here, and we'll come back maybe to Milky's. But anyway, my point to here we go. Cybernethy says video games are not a direct link to violent behavior. Lack of discipline and the psychological effects of its development could be, though, and that's the point I want to get at. We have a tendency all the time to make these issues black and white, like people kill people, guns don't kill people. So we don't even need to talk about gun rights because it's not the guns that are killing. But if people are using guns to kill, like we need to be able to discuss in every perspective, whether it's the mental health area, whether it's the gun area, whether it's whatever it is. Like you need to be able to talk openly and honestly about all aspects without just being completely dismissive of one area, or else you're never going to get the full truth of it. Because, and I think the same thing exists here of if we just dismiss violent video games altogether. And this is coming from a guy who loves gaming. But I think we need to bring everything under the umbrella of scrutiny. And if we feel like something is having an effect, we need to be at least open to having the conversation about it, to dig to the bottom and say, what is causing this? And be able to definitively say through studies, like violent video games have absolutely nothing to do with it and we can move on. But if you're always trying to distance yourself between two things that may have the possibility of being related, you're never going to get the full picture of what's causing these things. Because I do think, even in my own experiences, that my consumption of media has desensitized me to certain visual things. And I'll give you a real-world example of it. But there's a video online that I was watching at a much darker time of my life where I would just watch whatever was online.
Like the Bud Dwyer videos and stuff like that?
What's that?
The Bud Dwyer guy?
I don't know what that is.
He was the one that was in the news conference. And had the
Oh
box.
yeah, I've seen that. Yep,
Yeah.
yep. But it was the video of a man who had just got done shooting a cop. They brought him into an interrogation room. One of the detectives gives him a bottle of water, walks out of the room. The guy reaches into his belt, pulls out a gun, and shoots himself in the head. And I remember watching that and just being like, huh? And it wasn't that like I didn't have empathy for the guy or anything, but I was just expecting so much more out of what I saw. I was expecting like brains everywhere. I was expecting like what you see in video games because like, and Larry said this in the chat. He's in here. He said gaming and movie depictions of gunshot wounds are actually rarely accurate. Blood splatter, people flying off their feet. That's not how it goes. And that's absolutely what I felt within it. I was like, I imagine this guy's brains going all over the wall, but no, it was just went through, hole in the head fell to the side, blood started leaking, and I was just like, oh, that wasn't as bad as I thought it would be. And it wasn't, it was the fact that I didn't have a problem with it. Mm-hmm. And like I had empathy for the guy. Like I just watched the guy die, and that resonated with me. And yesterday watching that clip of those reporters who were getting shot, which deeply affected me because I knew I went to school with the female reporter that was shot, and like the screams and all that, like there was empathy that I had within it. But in terms of what I was intaking visually, it was like, this isn't impacting me in a way that should impact a human being. And it's not because I feel like I have any presupposition to being violent by any means, but because I have just seen it. And I've seen far more extreme examples, and the more and more realistic graphics become, the more and more desensitized we're going to become to it. Like, I play games where you've got a chainsaw gun, and you're cutting people in half. And it's like, so a bullet going through a guy's head and blood coming out the side of it is like, And that's a conversation we need to be willing to have, and, like, we need to understand, like, the more and more we expose ourselves to these things, the more and more comfortable we're going to become with them. And it may not mean we're ever going to act on an impulse to carry it out on ourselves, but we begin to lose a little bit of a sense of our humanity when we can intake images of people losing their lives and having horrific, atrocious things happening to them and just be like, or chalk it up to an entertainment value even. And seeing like even on Reddit, like some of the communities that exist about like watching people die and all those sorts of things. And it's like people come here to be entertained by that. And I think it does have something to do with it. I'm not blaming media on our problems whatsoever, because it comes down to who we are as people and the context and the disposition. But when we expose ourselves to these things without a full understanding of our disposition and our context, then they can affect us.
Beautiful.
Rant over.
Beautiful.
Any other thoughts? And then I've got a question that's kind of stemming off of here. Has there ever been a time in video games where you've been like, that's too much?
That I have experienced? No. Not that I have experienced, which is, again, sad. But I remember you guys were talking back in the day about this one game where it was just killing for the sake of killing. What was that? Remember that?
Oh, was it called Hatred?
Yeah. Like what is that propagating? What is that telling us? That you just mindlessly kill people because they deserve it. Like,
yeah, that's
absurd.
Well, that's not only giving you a glimpse into the psychopath's mind, that's asking you to step into the psychopath's mind, the sociopath's mind. Because the whole motivation behind that game is nobody else deserves to live except for me.
And then
and
you're
so
constantly shooting these people for that sake.
Yeah. Larry says, I've never seen this question asked. Has anyone ever done a study to consider if desensitization has its benefits? Like, is someone less likely to lock up in a crisis and maybe more likely to take helpful action? And Milky, and we'll come back to Larry's question. Milky513 brought up the one that really jumped out to me was, I don't remember what Call of Duty it was, but you put glass in a guy's mouth and you're trying to get answers out of him, and while he's not answering, like, you have to punch him, and you're essentially torturing this guy in order to get him to respond to you. And that and No Russian were like I played No Russian, and at the time, I just did it because it was part of the game, and then I stepped back from it, and I was like, "That's jacked up. Like that is messed up." And when a video game decides like this is so messed up, we're going to let you skip it if you want to skip it. Mm-hmm. Like that's how you know. And that's how you know. But going back to Larry's question, do you think there are benefits in desensitization?
Well, I mean, I believe it's shown through surgeons and through paramedics because, I mean, they got to be able to act right then and there no matter how shocking the situation is. So I say yes because it helps people respond better in that area. Now, the problem is that for it to get to that point, it's just a situation. It's just a procedure. It can't be, oh, this is a human with a crazy gunshot wound to his chest. You just got to look at it, hey, since I'm a surgeon or a paramedic, I've seen this before, so I need to deal with it. So there is a level of detachment with it as well, which I don't think is very good. Yeah. But yes, the desensitization, I just said it wrong. Yeah. Definitely helps in the emergency services. Absolutely.
Right. And within that kind of narrow focus of people who really need that to happen. But when you have just a broad sweeping mass of desensitization, and I understand that we have lacked empathy as a human race before electronic media ever came to pass. But I mean, it was always desensitization that led us there when we started making the hanging of individuals or stuff that took place in the Coliseum like our entertainment places. Our entertainment spaces, like we begin to lack and devalue human life, and when we look at situations and our immediate response to something atrocious happening is like those people need to die, and and we never try to we lose sight of rehabilitation, and we lose sight of the fact that even the people who commit atrocities, they are human beings as well, and our response is always hyper-violent and to do things. And that's the pacifist in me talking. And that's getting more political, and we're straying away from video games. But anyway, so any other things to say on this topic?
Oh, man, I think that's good. That's perfect.
All right. Well, that was topic 2.
Woo!
And if you're watching over here on twitch.tv/player3podcast, make sure you chat along with us. And we're going to do one more topic. Then we'll get into the after party lounge. Maybe we'll talk about this more if you guys want to talk about it more. The chat's been popping off. It's been great. We really love that. And if you missed it and want to see it again, go on over to youtube.com/player3podcast and look at the archive after we get done here. All right, Diz. Let's lighten things up a little bit here. Let's lighten things up. I think it's safe to say that all of us have unspoken rules that we live by.
Like shoot first, ask questions later.
That's right. That's right. No. And so my question to you is, what are some of those rules that you live by? Maybe for those of you who don't know, and I promise to tell stories about this, and maybe we'll get around to that in the after party lounge. Someone last week asked us how long we've been friends, and we started rooming together second semester sophomore year of college. I think so. Yeah, because I roomed with Robert, then I roomed with Jacob and Caleb, then I roomed with Jonathan, and then I roomed with you. Mm-hmm. So, and then we roomed together for 2 years of our lives. We lived together longer than we've lived together with our wives, and we remind them about that all the time when they're wondering why we're so in love. So I feel like I'm not going to be shocked by many of these, but I might be. So
you might be.
What are some rules that you live by, Diz?
Man, well, number one is go hard the first time. All right. When you do a new experience, do it to the full extent. So that means the next time you do it, it's not going to be that hardcore, that freaky. Like, I'm all about the person to not, be freaked out to do something. So when I do it the first time, it's hard. Like the tattoo.
Oh gosh.
Right down the bone.
Yeah. Tell them about it. Because you did go real hard in this.
Yes. Got it right down the front of my shin, all on the bone. I have like this much skin there, and I just went for it. It was my first time, so that means if I ever get another tattoo, it's not going to be as bad as that because I've already experienced it.
All right. One of my rules, and it's funny because we're going to disagree on this.
Yes, and I'll go ahead and jump to mine when you're...
Is flush every time.
Every time.
Every time. I don't care. I don't care about water. I don't care about conservation. I don't care about the whales. I don't want to blow a country off the face of the planet. But if those seals don't have water because I'm flushing the toilet, sorry.
Oh,
so flush every time. And see, I did not realize there were people in this universe that don't flush every time until I married my wife. And it's like, I walk into the bathroom and it's just like, what is going on in here? Like, water is generally clear.
Yep. Generally.
That ain't. And so, like, I go in there and I've got to, drop a deuce. And she's like, what are you doing? Like, I flushed before. And she's like, what are you doing? I'm like, if I poop and it's dense, I get the splash up of your pee on my butt. And I'm not about that life. Like, just flush. See, Zephyr baby don't know anything about this because Zephyr's over in Europe and they got like no water in their toilets, and they come over here and they're like, "Is that is that a chalice? Like, is that a water chalice right there? Like, what am I using the bath? Like, they have figured it out that you don't need to use a bunch of water to flush your toilet.
Truth. When
you go to the loo, for you, Zephyr. So I flush every time, even if I'm going to go in there and pee, and my wife hasn't flushed the toilet. I flush it, then I pee into it.
Oh my goodness! Okay.
I'm not about that. I'm not about mixing the liquids around here. You never know what you might create.
Dude,
I'm fully convinced my urine is radioactive. Also, that's more of a conspiracy theory, though.
I'm a yellow, it's mellow guy.
Oh, Zephyr says, "What are you talking about? We have water in our toilets, but you don't have near as much water in your toilet, Zephyr." I'm not kidding. You come over here and you're like, Is that the beginning bowl of a giant party bowl of Jell-O? Like, are you going to pour gelatin in there and just make a ton of it? There's a lot of water over here. We have not figured it out yet.
Dude, I'm a if it's yellow, it's mellow kind of guy. All right, now I pee upwards.
What?
Just yes, it's like a fountain. No, I pee around 3 times a night when I'm slumbering, and I wake up obviously. And you just get in there and you pee, you let it ride. You don't want to flush at 4 a.m.
Why?
You don't want that noise. You don't want that experience.
It's soothing.
No, it's not.
It's the sound of rushing water and cleanliness. Those are the 2 greatest sounds.
Nah, dude. I can just go and pee in my toilet 100 times.
How many times do you think it would take you peeing in your toilet before it overflowed?
Challenge accepted.
Okay, you have 2 bathrooms in your house, and you were from the yellow let it mellow thing. So just stop. Just only pee in one toilet and stop flushing, and just see how long it takes to get to the brim.
Oh my goodness! Like, there's got to be some math to that because I pee a lot. It's a lot.
All right, I'll look this up. How?
Remember that one time we were driving down the road, and I'm like, I'm afraid if I pee in this Gatorade bottle, it'll fill up. And you're like, no, it won't, dude. Seriously, it would.
Do you think you could fill up a Gatorade bottle?
It was one of those skinnier ones. It wasn't one of the big ones.
Oh, yeah, but still.
Dude, I pee
That's
so
a
much.
lot of urine, dude.
I impress people.
I'm a little worried about you. This is why you're always thirsty.
I know, because my stomach issue, I'm always chronically dehydrated.
Because it just runs right through you.
Goes.
You're just, all right, here we
There's
go.
got to be math behind this.
See, all of this is about how many times an average person.
Well, I'm probably pregnant because all the pressure in my bladder.
That's true. How much does an average male's bladder hold? There we go. Let's see.
And I wait till it's full to bursting.
It can hold up to about 2 cups
Comfortably.
Comfortably. So okay. And I am one of those people, like, as soon as it hits me, like, as soon as the feeling right, like, and that's another bathroom habit of mine. Like, some people wait till, like, they're at point critical when they're about to poop, that they're like, I'm going in there. I'm going in there just like, but that's just because it comes upon you. But I'm one of the, like, I'm a slow burn guy, but as soon as I get that feeling, I'm like, I'm going to go spend about 25 minutes company time on the toilet.
Company time.
You know? Why poop for free when someone can pay you to poop?
Hey, that's what I did at Lowe's.
That's another good rule to live by.
That's what I did at Lowe's.
That's a good rule to live by. So, okay, so the average bladder can hold about 2 cups. So how big is a toilet bowl? We did the math. That's another subreddit.
But then we also have to figure out how much water is in the bowl and then how much space to the rim of the bowl.
Right. Okay. This is all about dimensions, and I don't care about that. Look, if somebody... Okay, so most toilets use 1.6 gallons of water per flush. There you go, Zephyr. The average American toilet uses 1.5 gallons of water when you flush it.
1.6, so it's closer to 2. Good night.
But then high-efficiency toilets, which is what most of Europe is, do about 0.8 gallons of water.
0.8. For real? Dang.
Mad Brock says... It won't overflow. It's science. I would think the smell would become unbearable. Zephyr, stop debating us about the water level in your toilet and just accept that you've got less water, all right? Maybe you were just had your American goggles on.
Why would Zephyr know what a gallon is?
Oh, gosh, that's so true. Million liters, I think, is what you call them. Anyway, so the Cybernethy says, treat your toilet like a crime scene. Leave no evidence. Amen.
All right.
Amen. You got to wipe that thing down.
Disagree.
All right, what's next on your list?
If you value time, you value others.
But because that's like my next rule is 10 minutes early is always on time. That's what's on time. When you see Larry.
Oh, he's here. Oh,
no. I love Larry to death, and Larry and I have had this conversation. But Larry and I have 2 totally different views on time. To me, time is an objective thing, and to Larry, time is a subjective thing. And Larry is just chronically. He's gotten so much better in the last year of knowing him. But he used to just be chronically late, and I used to just be like, if we tell Larry 9. Let's just think 9:45. But he's gotten so much better. But
he's got a kid, and he lives an hour away.
See, Larry's even joking himself. He says, "Oh, that's on time." But now he has a kid, and he lives an hour away, and he's become better. So I can only imagine that if this Larry would have existed a year ago, how much even more on time he'd be.
Hey, someone's actually said it for Marie for Leo. If you want people to value your time,
you have to put value. Yeah,
very nice, Marie.
And that was the advice I gave to Larry when we talked about this. I was like, "Look, dude. If you want people to value your time, you got to value it first." And that's the philosophy I live by. Now, I fall short in many, 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 many other areas of my life, mainly weight. All right, but yeah, the idea of time. I like to be early. Larry will be like, "Hey, man, come to my house at 8:00," and I'm like in his driveway at 7:45 because I don't believe in fashionably late. Anyway. So yeah, I love to be early. What are some rules that you guys live by? Put them in the comments. You go ahead.
I have also accepted Ben's way of life, which is live hard, spend a lot of money, get debt, and die.
Oh, yes. That is a good rule. Not Player 3 Podcast endorsed, because we are not going to pay your debts for you. But the best thing to do is, I learned this from Clark Howard. You can send the creditors a drop dead letter, which means you can't communicate with me anymore. Now, they can still litigate against you.
Well,
You can still get the crap
problem.
shoot out of you, but you'll never see it coming, man. So you just get surprised by it one day. So you're just not dreading it all the time, you know, like, because they're just bugging you. Like one day, you get subpoenaed to court, and you just got to show up, and you just accept that as your reality. So drop dead letters. Les has a rule that I have adopted as mine, and he puts it in the chat. He says, "You win some, you lose a lot." That's my brother.
That's pretty good.
And that's not necessarily a rule. It's more of a philosophy of just being like, look, you win some, you lose a lot. So when you win, you celebrate it, and when you lose, you're like, it's kind of normal.
Learn from it, move on.
That's right. Cybernethy says there should be a business where you could trade 5 minutes for $500. There are some rich, successful folks who would consider that a bargain.
No, Wolf, he's not saying you suck.
What? Oh, yeah.
This is bad.
Lone Wolf, we're doing all right. Thanks for tuning into the stream. Are there any other rules you live by? Because I'm trying to think of some. I'm one of those dudes, I do not skip showers. Like, you will never encounter me on a day where I have not bathed at least once.
Okay. I can dig that. I like taking 2 showers.
I take 2 showers a day most of the time.
One shower to get clean and one to think, to get creative.
Yeah. Yeah. And to wash off the Derriere region where it's just been.
Dude, yesterday.
What? Oh, yeah. Sorry. I was a lot of stuff.
Bringing up dark
came in
memories.
Yeah, it's all right, buddy. It's all right. But yeah, I shower at least twice a day, and not at least twice a day. On average, probably 1.8 times a day. So 8 out of 10 days, I'm taking 2 showers a day.
Okay.
And I know that's probably terrible for your skin, but I don't care about my skin. Mm-hmm. Who needs it anyway? One year, I'll be called to donate my skin, like Meatwad. And I'll do it. Is them pennies? And you just giving them away? Larry says, he says, rule number 1, be a man. Now, I don't know if he's saying that like, hey, man, you better man up, or don't be a woman. Like in just a fully anatomical way. Biological. Number 2, improve daily. Number 3, obliterate all opposition, whatever that may be. I'm all right with that. All right. Cybernethy, if you're miserable, you may as well have some money. Because then you can be miserable in comfort. There's some consolation in having it. The challenge is finding ways to provide service for money. I had an idea about how to make money the other day, and I can't remember what it was. Maybe in the after party lounge, I'll think of it.
Involve baseball bats in other people's houses?
Possibly. Who knows? All right. Well, we're going to move into the after party lounge here in a moment. If you're watching over on youtube.com/player3podcast, we thank you for watching. If you're over here on twitch.tv/player3podcast, stick around. Maybe we'll talk more about violence in video games. Maybe we'll talk some more about rules that we live by in life. Maybe we'll talk more about the oversaturated genres, or maybe we'll talk about whatever you want to talk about. But make sure you hit that follow button, chat along with us in the after party lounge. But for those of you watching on YouTube, we love you, and we're out of here.